Good morning. Good morning. Noise is off, must be Lowell doing something out there. I want to welcome our visitors and explain that though we are few in the room, we are many overall. There are another 25 or 30 people somewhere out there in cyberspace watching us, which is why we have the camera set up there. And this morning, I want to ask you to use your imagination a little bit. I want you to imagine that we're sitting in a circle. And there's some reasons why we're not sitting in a circle, but mostly they have to do with being technical, being able to film. But also, as I'll mention later, sometimes circles can be a little intimidating to people because it's a closed group. And it was the great Judith Walker Riggs, late great Judith Walker Riggs, who said, when it comes to churches, thank God for back rows, because you get to put a little toe in at a time before you decide whether you want to be there. Most of you within the sound of my voice now are in other places. You're in France or Mexico or Ireland or the US. So it will just require this active imagination to place yourself in that most ancient of formations, sitting around a fire. In this case, our chalice flame. And in this way, we perceive that we are all equal and all equidistant from the source of wisdom and comfort represented by our symbol fire, the chalice. So now here's our flame lit for each one of you. Let's try singing a little something. And it's okay if you don't have a mask on. Try not to put COVID germs on anybody and we'll be fine. Number 43 in the Purple Book. Gather the Spirit. Speaking of circles, I'm going to do a reading which came from the words of Black Elk, who was for a long time chief of the Oglala Sioux American Indians. He was quite a remarkable person. People compared his work and his thoughts to Sufis and other mystical traditions around the world, which to me just demonstrates that revelation is not over and is not limited to a few old dusty books. And this is from a piece called The Sacred Circle. You have noticed that everything an Indian does is in a circle. And that is because the power of the world always works in circles, and everything tries to be round. In the old days, when we were a strong and happy people, all our power came to us in the sacred hoop of our nation. And so long as the hoop was unbroken, the people flourished. The flowering tree was the living center of the hoop, and the circle of four quarters nourished it. The east gave peace and light, the south gave warmth, the west gave rain, and the north, with its cold and mighty wind, gave strength and endurance. This knowledge came to us from the outer world with our religion. Everything the power of the world does is done in a circle. The sky is round, and I have heard that the earth is round like a ball, and so are the stars. The wind, in its greatness of power, whirls. Birds make their nests in circles, for theirs is the same religion as ours. The sun comes forth and goes down again in a circle. The moon does the same, and both are round. Even the seasons form a great circle in their changing and always come back again to where they were. The life of a man is a circle from childhood to childhood. And so it is in everything where power moves. Our teepees were round like the nests of birds, and these were always set in a circle. The nation's hoop, a nest of many nests, where the Great Spirit meant for us to hatch our children. Bet he was a lovely guy. Yeah. He came just at the end, after the American nation had finally betrayed the Native Americans and put them all in reservations. Now we're going to do something a little bit unusual. I badgered Lowell into learning a song this week that went with the theme of our service this morning, and it's called "Will the Circle Be Unbroken?" It was written by Mother Maybelle Carter and then later recorded by the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. And it's the kind of thing we don't hear all that often around here, but I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. Definitely. Thank you.
Well, it's got a chorus, this song, and I'd like to teach you the chorus because it's nice and jolly, although it's a bit of a sad subject. And so I'll play you the chorus. We'll practice it a couple of times before I do a few verses. Okay? This is how it goes. Will the circle be unbroken by and by, Lord, by and and by. There's a better home awaiting in the sky, Lord, in the sky. That's the chorus. So try it with me. We'll sing it a couple of times and get used to it, and then we'll do the song, okay? Will the circle be unbroken by and by, Lord, by and by? There's a better home awaiting in the sky, Lord, in the sky. Will the circle be unbroken by and by, Lord, by and by? There's a better home awaiting in the sky, Lord, in the sky. I was standing by my window on a cold and cloudy day when I saw that hearse come rolling for to carry my mother away. Will the circle be unbroken by and by, Lord, by and by? There's a better home awaiting in the sky, Lord, in the sky. I said to that undertaker, Undertaker, please drive slow, for the lady you are carrying, Lord, I hate to see her go. Will the circle be unbroken by and by, Lord, by and by? There's a better home awaiting in the sky, Lord, in the sky. Oh, I followed close behind her, tried to hold up and be brave, but I could not hide my sorrow when they laid her in the grave. Will the circle be unbroken by and by, Lord, by and by? There's a better home awaiting in the sky, Lord, in the sky.
Thank you. Lowell, thank you, thank you. I've been trying for years to get some more gospel music in here, because some of our Unitarian hymns are pretty, but they don't make you want to clap your hands and stomp your feet. And they don't make you want to believe the unbelievable, which is one of the good things church does for people. Well, welcome all of us. Hope we're feeling rested, relaxed, comfortable. This is the time to relax completely now, and relinquish all those tensions that we bring with us, to welcome and acknowledge the people that surround us, strangers, loved ones, those so familiar we can hardly even see them, and those who are with us virtually in other places and other times. And we say welcome to our spiritual home, whether we've been here for 20 years or 20 minutes. For now we know, we can trust that the Spirit has always lived here. And now we feel it surround us in this circle of friends and whisper to us in its inaudible but unmistakable message, welcome home. Well, this home of the Spirit is both old and new. Old as our founders 2 centuries ago, new as this hopeful morning. And this hour is as ancient as prayer itself, filled with the cumulative hopes and fears of people as they have reached within for what seems to be beyond. And this hour is new, filled with the urgencies of this day, this society, this set of plans and problems. And these two we release. The time for deciding is not yet. Now we simply seek the clarity and the love to act wisely. As we begin our accustomed descent into the heart of prayer, we do not know what it is that we seek. Only that it is not a voice declaring the one and only truth. Neither is it a glimpse of heaven overarching the world that we know and love. Nor is it a magical being to save and comfort our broken hearts. No, the still, small voice where the truth may be found. There at the very seat of our being, the wholeness of who and what we are and what we may become, that which lives in the good silence. One Spirit called Holy, God of history, welcome guest of the present, Spirit of what will ever be. Hold us close until we have learned to seek you in every corner of our world. Show us that your presence is not just something written in books, but that lives in every moment of our workaday lives. And not just in solemn prayer, but in all those lost hours of our time. This is our prayer this morning. And so we say, so be it. Inshallah. Shalom. Amen. The purple book again, number 98. And I couldn't remember whether we knew this, but we do. And Jill, you want to play about 8 bars or something first so we remember? Okay, play it right through. That's good. Thank you, cinematographer. About 5,000 years ago, give or take, some people living in the north of England looked at some big rocks lying around a river valley. They'd been chipped loose from the mountainsides by the moving ice of the glaciers. And the people had an idea. Why don't we just drag and heave these monster stones up on top of that hill over yonder? So they did. It probably took them hundreds of years, actually. But the people in those days weren't in such a hurry. They got the stones up there to the flat place at the top of Castle Rig Hill in the Lake District and put them in a big circle, 100 feet across. They buried the base of the stones in the earth so deep that most of them are still in place after 50 centuries of winter and weather and erosion. And a few years ago, I was standing in the rain in the middle of this stone circle. I recommend that. The hill is high and situated in the middle of a mountain valley. The views are breathtaking and panoramic. There were a few other people there as well. I realize that there have perhaps been millions, if you count everybody up, over the millennia who have done that. We read the tourist leaflets and ask the questions so many have done before. Why did these Neolithic farmers do that? Why? Well, people have asked that question about Stonehenge and all the other stone circles for as long as they've been there. There are stone circle enthusiasts who try to recapture some vanished sense of earth goddess worship, who measure the stones and decide which ones are male and which ones are female. I'm not kidding. There are those who point out they were used for astronomical calculations, a kind of calendar, by being oriented to the sun on Midsummer's Day, for example, in which there's a big example of this just there, Stonehenge. But in all of this is this kind of implication that they were acting out of some kind of vanished wisdom, that somehow they knew things that we hadn't quite comprehended, a kind of a lovely romantic idea that they had contact with the heavens in a way that we don't. Well, the largest stone in the group was situated at the southeastern face of the circle, almost certainly the point at which the sun rose at the darkest day of midwinter. And this would be seen by a person standing in the exact middle of the circle, but it's something that frustrates circle watchers. The measurements in all these stone circles are not really very exact. They're really a little bit squiffy. It frustrates people who want to see evidence of human perfection in there. But in the case of this one in Castle Rig Hill, it's sort of flat on one side of the circle. As I stood there, I thought, oh, I wish they'd move that out a little bit, if they, you know. And I'm sure that 1 million people have thought the same thing. And I think maybe 50 centuries ago, somebody said, hey, guys, that's good enough. Leave it, okay? Nobody's going to notice. But as I stood there in the drizzle, it occurred to me that asking why the circles had been built was not necessary. It'd be like asking a child why she builds a sandcastle on the beach. The answer would be very simple: because I can. This is the amazing thing about human beings. They might squat shivering in the damp of a hovel. They might starve and have a life expectancy of 25 years and die of toothache, but they will find a way to lug these boulders uphill and do it over and over again. And they'll put them in a circle because that's the most basic shape there is, one that encloses, making everything that is inside the circle different from everything that is outside of the circle. The stone circle builders were not very different from us. When we huddle together to share life's experiences, we will probably find that we do it in a circle. When we want to get together after the passing of a loved one or celebrate the arrival of a child, whether or not we're toasting with our drinks, we'll probably circle round. When we simply want to share a few laughs, trade news, even pass along some livestock or some goods for trade, why, we'll probably do it just like that. We might sit around a fire, and once again, I ask you to use your imagination. This is supposed to be in the center of our little circle. As we talk and listen, allow our eyes to rest on the flames and dream a little bit. This may be the most human thing in the world. And as Black Elk says, the circle has forever been a symbol of perfection. When people looked up from their campfires to the heavens, they saw this great round sky full of stars, the sun and moon in this perfect arc overhead, the two round lights of the sky marking the visible path of a circle. And of course, a circle is the most efficient way of enclosing space, isn't it? When you eliminate the corners of a room, you need less wall to surround you. So igloos and teepees and crude huts of stockaded logs are round. Pots are round because they have to be, don't they? What other shape could they be? The jewelry of which we make vows is round, and rings and bracelets and necklaces. In a world full of imperfect and irregular man-made shapes, what could have been more beautiful than the round eye of your lover? Circle of color and a wildflower. When the ancient thinkers started to struggle with describing God, the circle was the archetype most employed. It's hard to think of anything as vast as creation without imagining it being round. A guy named Saint Bonaventure in the 4th century is credited with having said this. Listen carefully. There'll be a pop quiz on this. The nature of God is a circle whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. The nature of God is a circle whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. Such a mind-stunning attempt to put shape to the infinite is a demonstration of how the circle is a central symbol in religion. And then, in the 8th century, a theologian named Abba Dorotheus made what I think has to be the first known genuinely Unitarian statement. He described the path to God as a wheel. Imagine a wagon wheel or a bicycle wheel now, with spokes emanating from a hub. And he said the hub, that's God. And the rim, that's creation. He said, and in the path moving from creation toward God, you get into these, you can't really see around the rim to anyone else who's got a different path to yours. But as you head down the spoke, they hove into view. And the closer you get to God, the closer you get to all of their paths as well. And so there are many paths with the same destination. all is resolved ultimately in merging with God, represented by the hub. To my own mind, that a Christian theologian could even have proposed such a thing speaks to me of a lost awareness. Something has been lost behind various theologies which have come along and claimed supremacy. And of course, there's always been a core awareness in all the Eastern religions about the great wheel of life. This is a circle of life, death, and reincarnation embedded in Hindu thought, the dance of Shiva that goes round and round through centuries of eons and yugas, in which we're all enmeshed to the wheel of samsara in Buddhism, the great merry-go-round from which we must, like the Buddha, all ultimately escape. Even California's got its own. What goes around comes around. The law of karma. If we human beings have a fondness for meeting in circles, that's both a blessing and a curse. And here's what I wanted to tell you earlier. When Indians attacked the wagon train, they pulled around in a circle. You've seen the movies. They did the same thing in South Africa against the Zulus. They called it a lager. Now that's two A's, lager. Later, a motto of apartheid itself. The circle is the most inclusive form, yeah, which makes it the most exclusive form as well, which is why Judith Walker Riggs said, thank God for back rows. If you're in a circle, everything is intimate. You're at home, you belong. If you're outside that circle, you're a foreigner, a stranger, and lost. Well, our community is not really so different if our circle of chairs, which I lament, gives us comfort and a sense of belonging. It may also give somebody else a feeling of being excluded. The words of the hymn are prophetic. We need to find a way to extend the warmth of our belonging and keep doing it until it encompasses everything living. That's the task. Not decreasing circles, growing circles. And the great teachers have often told us that the feelings of love and concern that we have for members of our own families, or our tribe, or our ethnic group, are pointers to the way we must ultimately learn to live. That small circle holds the key to the bigger circle. Meher Baba said, when we rejoice in the happiness of others and feel their pain, just as we do for our own dear ones, then we are loving God. The good news is that our feeling of connectedness with our close circles is a model for something greater. The bad news is that it only exists sometimes in the very act of exclusion. The circle that is the universe is no less our own. The way forward is the extension of our concern way beyond this room, this country, even this epoch. Metaphorically, we have to push hard against the constraints of our narrow circle, not break it. Have you ever noticed how if people are sitting around a dinner table and someone else arrives, someone will stand up and get a chair and open a space, and somehow magically someone else is able to sit there? Well, that's what we must do. It's a mighty effort, an effort greater than hauling those stones from the valley floor up to the top of Castle Rig Hill. But it is one we know, ultimately, we know we must succeed in doing. And so is one we know, ultimately, we will do. You know why? Because we can. That's why. Amen. Yeah. Beautiful. Just right, Jill. I was welling up there. Some of you will have heard, some not, that a member of 45 years standing, former treasurer of the church, Roy Pito, died last week. And we'll be having his funeral service here in the church on the 7th of March, Monday, 7th of March, at 10 in the morning. His surviving children will be here today at noon to have a cup of coffee with us and work out the details of the funeral, but that's what's in mind. He was in Croydon the last year and a half of his life, and I never knew it because the last time I spoke to him, he was still living down near Rochester, and he was in a nursing home. He struggled with dementia. So we'll remember Roy, remember how he was the treasurer, kept the church going on a lean diet of money for quite a long time. Also, on the 2nd of April, we're planning a memorial service for John Krask. And have you picked a time for that?
Well, I was going to ask you today, but will 11 o'clock be all right?
Sure. Yeah, so John, somebody will remember better because he was here with us until recently, and he was chairman of our church. And we have to mark his passing properly. Everybody got left out a bit during the pandemic, during the lockdown in particular, in which funerals were limited to, what was it, 4 people? Yeah, so we're going to do that. That's on the 2nd of April, and there'll be more news of that, and we'll put something in the newsletter about it as well for Jim. Then next week, I'm taking my first day off since 2020. Yeah, I'm taking my first day off, and Jim Corrigal is going to take the service. And so we won't be recording, so it'll just be us chickens here for him. Great. And so maybe he can actually use the whole church instead of this corner. So come and see Jim, support Jim next week. and I'll be back the week after that. Anything I should say? We're not passing the stock around yet, although we probably will start soon. But if you want to give some money to the church, there's a little wooden box just outside. And yes.
The LDPAGN,
Sorry?
we have the LDPA.
LDPA, the LAPD, you mean, yes. The LAPD, the LDPA is the London District and Provincial Association of Unitarian and Free Christian Churches. Will be here on the 12th of March, and we're going to have a feast, and somebody other than me is going to do all the talking, and it's usually a good do, so you're all welcome to that, anybody who wants to come. And it starts at 2 in the afternoon, about, yeah, and I'm not sure which end of that where the food is, but you just have to take your chances on that. Okay, let's sing again, number 198. We're going to sing the first 2 verses only, and it's We'll Build a Land. That's one of those great Carolyn McDade pieces, I think. Wonderful. Now we're going to part, but please don't wander off. We've got coffee, and maybe Lola's got some goodies as well to eat. From the world within to the world without. From in here to out there. Let us all go forth strengthened by this fellowship, inspired by the visions which our hearts sometimes grant us, and surrounded by that peace which led someone once to say that it passes all understanding. And so may we look after one another, because we know we can, until we meet again. Amen.